by my colleague Siddharth Zarabi, and of course, a huge round of applause for our speaker, Hardeep Singh Puri, Union Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs and Petroleum and Natural Gas.
Mr. Minister, thank you very much for coming here and spending time. When we came to see you, to invite you here, you said you'll only come for this, you won't do any things on the side, so we really appreciate that, and thank you from the entire Business Today Multiverse and the India Today group for making time for us. India is doing very well, but the government seems to be driving most of the engines of the economy. Is the private sector, in your view, not following the lead that the government is sending? And if so, why would that be the case?
First of all, I'm delighted to be here. Delighted because being in the midst of celebrity entrepreneurs, that's the term I coined in coming here, I entirely agree with Mr. Arun Puri when he talks about India being a country of entrepreneurs. I think after a long time, a government is trying to push an ecosystem and succeeding to a large extent in which the public sector has also responded with vibrant growth. In fact, if you look at the 6 large companies in the country, if you take out Reliance Industries and LIC, the other 4 are oil companies. Now, you can quarrel with the nuance of the statistic. You can't take away the hard facts. Somebody was trying to have some fun with me the other day and said, "Haan, market badhi hai to companies bhi uthi hain." So, which I didn't want to respond because, after more than half a century in battling, having to navigate such situations, one day, next press conference I had, I put up a slide. I said, Nifty has gone up by 43%, and all the oil companies that you are naming have gone up in multiples thereof. Somebody twice, somebody thrice, somebody 4 times. So the public sector is doing well, but I would say about time. Because the public sector in the past did not rise to the occasion. Now when it comes to the private sector, look, I think Amitabh and I belong to the same school. 2/3 of domestic resources and mobilization comes from the private sector. I have no doubt that will always continue to be the case. But I think the time has come for the Indian private sector to shed some of the inhibitions and to accept global challenges which are theirs. I think it's low-hanging fruit for them. Why do I say that? Not because many of my friends are being acknowledged globally. No, but for an entirely different reason. I think your chairman, when he was speaking, he was referring to the global situation. The honest God's truth is that large parts of a world which we were deeply influenced by, let me take the European Union to start with, they are facing economic challenges of a very high order. If you get quarter on quarter stagnant or negative growth, you are technically in a recession. There's no point in us saying, no, the recovery is there. So the fact is, it's not there. Now, I say that from the perspective of the energy sector with which I'm directly linked. I went to Germany recently. I went to Austria. I've seen what's happening in France, in the UK. So there is an anxiety factor there. But more than that, in the world's second largest economy, $19 trillion, there are issues. There are issues, and I think when the full facts get known, we'll get a clearer picture of what's happening. So when Mr. Puri says that India is a bright spot, I don't know why you use the word bright spot or sweet spot, but that's a fact. What I would like to see, this is a personal wish, I don't speak on behalf of the government, you're going to grill me on who I am and what I talk about. But I think the Indian private sector needs to step out when I look at the energy sector, almost all the talent there, engineering and otherwise, is drawn either from India or from Indian origin people. When I talk to American companies here in the energy sector, they're employing tens of thousands of people. Can we produce enough and more quality graduates who can fill that void? Look at where the innovation is taking place. Look, it doesn't stand to reason that if an economy is just haltingly moving ahead, innovation will stop. No. But equally, you can make out a case where the economic growth is vibrant. In the energy sector, our growth is 3 times the global average. You will have more innovation taking place here. Because the innovator is also drawn to the industry which is growing. If you look at our refineries, if you look at green hydrogen, so my small message to that, I'm sorry, a long-winded answer to a very straightforward question, but I think the Indian private sector, many of them were mentally anchored in London, mentally. I'm choosing my words carefully. I used to be posted there. And they brought in some inheritance laws. They moved physically to Dubai. Today, they are centered in Dubai, but the business is not in Dubai. The business is here. So the limited submission I'm making to you is that Indian companies must become global MNCs. It's happening, by the way, in some of the areas where you would least expect pure entrepreneurial talent. I hosted a working breakfast for Mr. Gates the other day, and I had some of these youngsters there. I mean, heartwarming stories. Look at where they started, look where they've reached, and where they're going. But those of you who have, and today you're celebrating excellence. You're celebrating the best.
Right.
And these are people who've contributed to the Indian economy. And these are the people for whom going forward the Indian economy will receive more from them. But I think time is now to shed that inhibition, assume global leadership, and I think it will happen sooner than. And the private sector will, I think, play a role. My OMC's global PSUs are also doing it. They're acquiring assets outside.
Right.
But I think you have a better chance through the private sector of doing it.
For that to happen, what changes need to be made as far as government policy is concerned, the regulatory architecture is concerned, not just for the oil sector, overall?
Well, I've been on record to say that in the 7 years or so that I've been in the government, in the council and the cabinet, less than, I have never come across any suggestion which, if offered from the private sector or elsewhere, which has not been acted on by the government. I'm more aware of the action that we've taken in the ministries I'm associated with. For instance, we were told that, private capital will come into the housing sector, provided you also have an escape route. So we set up REITs. And today the money coming into the commercial segment of the private sector, I mean, unbelievable. They're coming into data centers, into warehouses, etc. Why? Because you can make your money in 8-9 years, recover your money, and then you also have an exit route. You don't get trapped. And by the way, I think ours is a first-rate record. You've never stopped any remittances. You've never tried to appropriate or confiscate any property. But anything further that needs to be done, and I could tell you what we've done in the government is completely open to advice, to suggestions, and they will be discussed and acted on.
But why, for example, did your government not allow the opportunity for private capital to take over Bharat Petroleum Corporation?
No, wait a minute. No. It's a brilliant question. Brilliant question. I joined the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas in July 2021. So it's what, 2.5 years plus? And I was amazed. And it is a very contrasting story. When I was Civil Aviation Minister, I was absolutely banging my head against the wall, and Mr. Kant helped me. And I said in Parliament one day, without any authorization, that the choice between privatization of Air India is not privatization or no privatization. The choice is privatization or the closure of Air India. And I admitted in Parliament that I don't have the capacity every year to go to my senior colleague, the finance minister, and ask for 8,000 crores. Why? Because the previous attempt at privatization was, we will retain 17% or 20%. So you make a mess of an airline for 50 years, produce an entity that is not growing, that is sucking in government support. And if you want to sell it, you will have to make a clean this thing about it. So we changed this thing. I said privatization or closure. I'm glad I won my point. The privatization took place a few months after I was Civil Aviation Minister, but I take a large part of the credit and the blame if any has to come. And today you're in a situation, the airline is ordering thousands of planes. Indigo, Air India, between them, this is the success story in civil aviation the world over. Now let me come to BPCL. I was told कि BPCL को बेचना है. मुझे तो समझ ही नहीं आई. क्यों बेचना है? If I looked at the work culture, I went about it very quietly. I looked at the work culture of BPCL, it was amongst the best in the OMCs. I looked at the talent there, amongst the best. So I decided, instead of, I couldn't get up in parliament and say, हम BPCL नहीं बेचेंगे, because there'd be another furor. So what I did was we quickly started turning them around. And to answer your question, in the first 3 quarters of this year, BPCL has earned more money or nearly that much money as the amount for which it was being sold by at that point of time. And today, you know, and let me say where it started. When I became Civil Aviation Minister, in Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister in July of 21, everyone I would meet, from the sheikhs in the Gulf Kingdoms, from my friends in the colder climates of Northern Europe, everybody said, हमको BPCL खरीदना. So I told my young colleague, मैंने यार सारे खरीदना चाहते हैं, आप बेचना क्यों चाहते हो? There must be something good in it. So it's just an uninitiated newcomer's minister's instincts. And then when we looked at it today, it's a success story. The former BPCL chairman, who's now the ONGC chairman, when I look at what they're doing, I mean, I want to complete this. I took the Honorable Prime Minister to the BPCL stall at the India Energy Week. And he saw an indigenously manufactured electrolyzer which produces, you know what an electrolyzer is. All you need is cheap green energy and an electrolyzer and you can produce green hydrogen. And it is at 30% of the cost of what an imported electrolyzer would be. So what are we discussing? So everything should not be privatized. And certainly your family assets of this kind should not be. But it's growing. These are all entities operating like private sector entities.
Mr. Puri, would I be right in saying that some people here might be thinking that this is the return of the Mai Baap ki Sarkar, you know, big PSUs, government control, BPCL नहीं बेचेंगे, oil companies को petroleum prices नहीं बढ़ा के रखने देंगे 2 साल से. Why are you interfering in the market then?
नहीं, ऐसा है ना. I'm one of those who was born believing in the magic of the market. But I shed my innocence early in life. You know, I was a young trade negotiator. I must have been a total of 1981, mein, how much was I? 28 or 29 years old. When I went to Geneva, and first issue I had to deal with was trade in textiles and clothing. So I uska thodi padhai ki, and I discovered that as soon as we became competitive in the manufacture of, you know, garments are low-end manufacture. Low-end. So what they did is they took the entire trade in textiles and clothing out of the free trade rules of the GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and subjected it to a derogation. तो आप किस चीज में competitive हो, उसको तो free trade rules से निकाल दो. तो वो जो बाप होता है, माई बाप या आपका बाप या सबका, उसका ये भी देखना होता है कि आपका प्राइवेट सेक्टर भी ग्रो करे, इंडियंस भी ग्रो, पर प्रोटेक्शन इतनी नहीं देनी चाहिए that you are protecting inefficiency. So you're right there, but not at all.
But sir, if I were to add Bharat Sanchar with Bharat Petroleum, what about Bharat Sanchar?
Let me stick to Bharat Petroleum. Let me tell you, because Bharat Sanchar में मैं कुछ बोल जाऊं और मंत्री को कल अगली सेशन में बुला लो. No, I don't want that. Let me tell you frankly. देखिए ऐसा है. This gentleman sitting here is now you represent what? One of the biggest...
FMCG? one of the largest such companies in the world.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying. How did it grow? It went because it had entrepreneurial talent, everything. And now a lot of people are also in the business of essentials. Now when you talk about the oil sector, and I know a little bit about that, when global prices went through the roof, today I did a press conference and I showed that the Saudi CPU, which controls our gas pricing, went up 303%. If we had passed on that increase in gas prices globally to our consumer, believe me, it would have been a very difficult story to manage. Now let me take half a minute to that. Why do I talk about this? Because liquefied petroleum gas is made from crude oil, which is refined in our refineries. If the global prices goes there, then 85% of our requirement we are dependent on imports. So if we had allowed that price to go up, the three trilemma, availability, affordability and sustainability, all would have gone for a 6. So we didn't tell the oil companies, this is the point I'm trying to make. I want anybody sitting here, I am very often asked this question by my friends who are in business and politics. यार आपको ऊपर से इशारा आता है, मेरे को तो अभी तक नहीं आया इशारा है. आपको कभी इशारा आया कि आप ये करिए? No, they were good corporate citizens, therefore they did not increase the price for the 2 years. Government stepped in by reducing the VAT in November 21 and May 22, as a result of which, in that 2-year reference period, we have the lowest petrol and diesel prices in the world, also the lowest gas price. So this is not a my bap telling them what to do. But let me tell you another piece of evidence that it's not my bap. जब उन्होंने हमसे कहा कि देखिए we behaved like good corporate citizens, पर हमारा 28 करोड़ का नुकसान हुआ, how did we react? I went to my boss and he said, this is correct, they've been good citizens. He said, क्या करना है? Then we decided इनको 28,000 करोड़ का नुकसान हुआ, 21,000 crores we reimbursed. This is not my bap telling them, come what may, you cut your profits, go into loss. Not at all. Because we are aware that they are answerable to their shareholders. They have to go to their boards for a decision. So that should prove it's not a my bap.
Wouldn't oil bonds have been an easier option?
Huh? Oil bonds, I'm glad you asked this. Yeah, I'm glad. Today I did a press conference because there is a guy whom I affectionately called, he's a friend of mine, assistant professor of the newly appointed gas university in Haryana. He made a big tweet. हमारे ज़माने में गैस की प्राइस ये थी, हमने 60,000 करोड़ की सब्सिडी दी. So I had a very simple answer. मैंने कहा आपने 60,000 करोड़ की सब्सिडी किसको दी? वो गैस तो थी नहीं उस समय. भाई 2014 में जब मोदी जी आए, total number of gas cylinders available in the country was only 14 crores. तो आपने 60,000 करोड़ की सब्सिडी दे दी without providing the gas to the consumer. Then what happened after that? Something very simple. अब हमने 32,000 करोड़ सिलेंडर कर दिए, हमने उज्ज्वला इंट्रोड्यूस कर दी है, प्राइस भी हम नीचे है, एंड वी आर यूटिलाइजिंग दैट सेम. आफ्टर ऑल सब्सिडी कहां से आती है? टैक्स पेयर से आती है ना. सो यू टेक फ्रॉम द टैक्स पेयर एंड यू गिव वन सेक्शन. नाउ यू गिविंग देम 3 times फ्री ड्राई rations in a day. You're doing all your other expenditure. And by the way, that oil bonds, they maintained prices by issuing oil bonds for 1,41,000 crores. And poor chaps like me who came later into the ministry, we are paying back 3,50,000 crores. So these are two contrasting models. One completely fiscally irresponsible and the other rational to lift the situation.
Mr. Puri, since this is the best CEO's award and it's not restricted only to private sector, I have to ask you, what prompted you? Was it a ishara or wasn't there one to ensure that our headless PSUs, because the audience must know this, I think if you were to do an empirical study, you will find that the best tenure appointment of these oil marketing companies has happened during Mr. Puri's tenure. I have covered this ministry for many years. How did that happen, sir?
Yeah, how did it happen is very simple. I tell you, on 7th July, when I took over, I found two strange things. Every sector needs a regulator. I did not have a chairman of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board. I didn't even have a quorum. So any decision they took couldn't be taken. There's no quorum. Our ONGC, which is our largest company, I think, it used to have CMDs coming for, one of them, Alkaji, was for 3 months. And she came from the HR. No, I have nothing against HR. All streams must be allowed to go up. Bhai, agar aapko itni badi company chalani hai, to you will have to get some hard, So today I'm very happy to inform you, all the PSUs are well-headed, all of them are doing well, but what the government can do, and look, I have nothing, I won't say I have nothing to do with it. The Prime Minister made one of the most innovative decisions. He said कि आपका वो जो होता Public Enterprises Selection Board, it tends, I shouldn't say this because I might be faulted, but he said let's get somebody from the private sector to head the Public Enterprises Selection Board. And we had my friend Malika Srinivasan, who's Venu's wife, and the rest is history. We have no difficulty in having an open dialogue. We know the quality of person we want. We might not know the person. We have no hesitation in recruiting from outside. And a lot of changes are taking place. Because, and this credit goes to my boss, who saw this early. Otherwise, abhi, Amitabh, you don't mind if I say this, na? नहीं तो ये IAS वाले ना, इनका भाईचारे का ecosystem बन जाता है. एक IAS अफसर दूसरे IAS ऑफिसर को support करता है. No, अमिताभ तो मेरे side में है. नहीं, फॉरेन सर्विस का बेचारा, उनको तो आप बैठने नहीं देते कमरे में यार.
Okay, we have the IAS, the IFS, the Indian Corporate Service in some ways, but as I wind down this conversation, एक आखिरी सवाल आपसे. आपका फिर से चुनाव लड़ने का मन नहीं हुआ इस बारी?
मेरा बिल्कुल नहीं है भाई चुनाव लड़ने का. I still have a very respectable 3 years of my Rajya Sabha term left, and I'm kept not reasonably busy, but all of us are traveling relentlessly, so the answer is a flat no. मन की बात कर रहा हूं, मेरा मन नहीं है.
Thank you very much for your Man Ki Baat. I know all of you here, you and all the CEOs here have a very tight schedule, so we'll call it a day here. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sir.
God bless.